There is something that I just saw that bothered me greatly. And I can't entirely articulate why, but I'm going to try. And I'm going to mine my aggravation with this to have what I hope is a coherent bit of news. Um, what I hope is a coherent bit of news that takes place about 10 minutes. And you're going to say, wow, how on earth could someone so toasted do the news that well? And yet, it will be what will have taken place. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. This content is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you the opportunity for allowing me to do so. I don't know where you've clicked onto, but you've probably seen the picture of Bernie Sanders sitting there with the bandage on his head. Yes, that may be brutal to show and to watch and to look at, but look, losing has consequences, right? And if it didn't, everybody would do it. In this very specific instance, I see a person that led a large number of people through the forest and into a blue wood chipper. What I mean by that is what didn't seem to even be a contest, whether it was his own biases that allowed him or that prevented him from acting and taking action, especially from the standpoint of where you needed to go in order to potentially win that race. And maybe not necessarily being buddy-buddy was a way to do that when you're trying to win a race, especially what's at stake. All right, yeah, that's bothersome. So I'm going to show you what it is. This, right here. Our Revolution, Sanders, the Line Group, and PD America and Roots Action issue joint acceptable, unacceptable Biden running mate list. Okay, Karen Bass tweets, E. Warren, and Senator Baldwin. Not okay, Kamala Harris, Representative Val Demings, Senator Duckworth, and Senator Haysen. Left out Rice and Bottoms. Bottoms is like the most sexist name person in politics. I read that and I thought nobody is going to care about that. In fact, nobody cares to such a degree that it's the fact that nobody cares and the degree to which nobody cares. Not a single individual that makes that news in and of itself. Who gives a shit? Who this group thinks is a yay or nay. And how, again, I've asked this on more than one occasion, how is it a demand if you can't stand by the demand, if there's no consequence? Meaning if you say, yeah, Kamala Harris is not okay, and they say, okay, fine, we're going to choose Kamala Harris. What are you going to do? Are you going to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? Or are you going to, what, do something else? What are you going to do? In your frame of reference of the world, what do? You're going to bend to form. You're going to go pull that lever for Joe Biden, and you're going to call it a day and take a shower. That's what you're going to do. Meaning, that doesn't matter one goddamn iota. This doesn't mean a thing. I don't even know why this tweet was sent. That's how pedantic. That's how minuscule this is. It doesn't matter. You lost. You lost it all. Not just lost it all, you didn't even fight. Let's be honest. I am so bothered by this on so many levels. On so many levels. What do you have? Explain to me. Tiny words. Short sentences. Explain to me. What do you have as leverage to even call this a demand? A no list? A no list? A negative list? A negative. What does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean that's your opinion, where you just feel a particular way about that person? Or is there a little bit more to it than that? meaning a consequence if they violate your no. No. And the person keeps going, and you say, okay, fair enough. Then that's not a no list. No implies consequence. No implies something on the other end of that that somewhat negates the fact that the person is violating what you're saying. How do you have a no list at all? Why do you even have an opinion? Like, that's the news of this, I think, more than anything else. Why should anybody give a flying fuck about the opinion of these organizations? Especially in the context of choosing a vice president. When regardless of who they choose, you will bend to form and vote for them anyway. Which means your no means nothing. It doesn't mean anything. It's squat. It's squat. 70% of the people who are voting for Joe Biden are doing so entirely to remove Trump. How sad is that? How sad is that? Joe Biden lost every last policy argument. Every last one. Electability. You had a population that was so beaten and terrified that blacks, you have nowhere else to go. You have Hispanics. Trump is going to deport you, despite the fact that that Obama actually was the one doing the deporting. So Joe Biden doesn't get those numbers like that. Look, basic point. Very basic point. What do you have as leverage? What do you have as leverage? My idea was for everyone to stand outside of the party under a banner of these are the policies we will accept or not accept. And if they say, yeah, kick rocks, then you say, okay, fair enough. The majority of the public is with us. That means you're being anti-democratic, and you fight an argument from that standpoint, knowing full well with the absolute intention of making them lose. Because at that point, they're not working on your side. You're not working to the same political ends. You're in the middle of a pandemic. And in the middle of a pandemic, 30 million people are out of work. 20 million or so are out of healthcare. How are those people going to pay for their bills, even those with insurance for that matter, dealing with COVID-19? Like, all of these things. And the best that they can get is Joe Biden's public option, something that, for whatever reason, Obama didn't necessarily want to do when he was in office. Well, to be honest, Obama didn't give a shit about the healthcare thing. He just let them write the bill. I'm making a very basic point that you have nothing. You didn't stand under a banner of policy and saying this is what we'd accept, this is what we not accept, somewhat of more assertive policy. That assertiveness actually would have been your best chance in trying to get some level of concessions, because they would have at the very least had some tendency to think they were going to lose. The thing is, they would have called you, turncoats and everything else, but so what? That's what they are, of course, going to do. That shouldn't matter to you one iota. You make your point, you make your argument about healthcare, you make them justify their positions on those items, or to not get your support. But that's not what happened. That's not what happened. And Trump got worse. And because Trump got worse, the power of you have nowhere else to go ticked up that much more. With more and more people getting that much more terrified, saying, oh, fuck, we got to get him out of office. I don't care what happens. I don't care what Joe Biden does. Joe Biden can come out with his pants down to get the mail and pee on a reporter on his way back in. And you will still have his polling numbers being just about what they are, because they would accept, this is what I must bear to get rid of Trump. Think of how sad that is. At the moment to which you're presented with in history, think about how sad that is. And the groups that you would have thought would have had some level of power in this process right now are powerless, meaningless. This means nothing. And they would all bend the knee if Joe Biden slapped each one of them and then chose Kamala Harris. Like, literally slapped, open-handed. Called him boy and everything else. They would have all chose still Joe Biden. Something's wrong with your political system. Something is entirely wrong with our political system. Our world should not be this way. And I understand that people get into their heads certain patterns of thought. Meaning, if the only thing that you know is a particular way of doing things, then you gravitate towards it. And when you're looking at patterns in regards to politicians, Joe Biden looks like the same slick 90s politician that they're used to as being a Democrat. The mainstream media looks at him, that's the normal Democrat. And they look at Sanders and they said, he seems so different. The difference is distrusted inherently. They don't trust the difference. Despite the fact that if you ask them about the policies, yes, we agree with these policies. Part of that difference is whether or not that difference between him and who Joe Biden is that sufficient to win? Now, we would make the point that said Hillary Clinton lost, Al Gore lost, John Kerry lost, Obama was the radical that was in that particular race. He actually won. Your chances of getting a candidate that was making an affirmative case would have been with Sanders. And not just that, with the position that we're in right now, a ham sandwich could beat Donald Trump. Which means that all of that stuff was given up over something that didn't even exist, the electability nonsense. And now Joe Biden, man out of time, is the guy who all of these people are worshiping. Because unlike Hillary Clinton had distilled, you have nowhere else to go into the finest of powders. But Joe Biden was able to make it an aerosol. Because Donald Trump, as bad as he has gotten, Joe Biden has basically just needed to do nothing. Let the man hang himself. And that's what he did. Which basically tells America to go fuck itself. Massively dispiriting, to put it mildly. And I understand that it being massively dispiriting is coming out in this kind of maybe unfair anger. But it is what it is. The highs of this stuff, man. Like, when we were doing, Sanders was running into the race. I don't know how other people experience that stuff, but I know for me, I experience it as, how to explain that? Potential. That's what it is. Like, I've always said traveling makes me a better person. And I say that because, the experiences are different. You go, day after day after day, and each day is a different thing, and you have to accommodate to each particular day. It's a challenge in and of itself, just to kind of go from point A to point B. And when you get back home, it's not that way. There's a level of sameness and perpetuity, just day after day after day after day. Everything is the same. The house is the same. Everything looks the same. The experiences that you do are the same. The routines, those things are deadening inside. And I think with the Sanders stuff, it had an ounce of potential with it. Meaning, for the first time, there was this potential for something to be different. Especially in the context of how people are able to live and how people are able to get by. Less pain, less harm, less poverty, which would mean less crime, less healthcare issues or disparities. All of these things could have been lessened just with him and a movement behind him where he could kind of be the pivot point in that office that kind of makes the demand of saying, look, the public is out here. I got to do something about it, right? But that's not what happened. The first time he gets shafted, the second time he gets shafted, and he doesn't fight. He doesn't fight. Massively dispiriting, to put it mildly. And then it becomes, all right, I'm out here to saying go vote for Joe Biden. And it's like when Hillary Clinton went after Obama in that race, when them two went at it, that was a fight. That was two wildebeests fighting over a piece of ham. And they fully understood, yes, I want that office. I would give my life to get that office. That's where they were. Sanders was never there. When the Democratic Party, and I think people misunderstand the power in that. It's the power to say, fuck it, I'm not playing. That's a power, believe it or not. And that's a power that the left is always weird on. The Democratic Party, they tell you have nowhere else to go. And they tell you blue no matter who. The Republicans are monsters. And you say, okay, yeah, you're right. Because there are aspects of that narrative that is absolutely flat fact true. By the same token, there's another side to that narrative that you're being sold something in order to get you to this notion that this appeasing of this is all that I can do, or this is all that we can get, or this is all that we can be even. And it's insufficient. for the people who are basically living here. And yet there's a crust of this country that things work absolutely perfectly well for. And not just well, there's a part that works extraordinarily, phenomenally well. Sanders was the potential to change that. And, it's happened before. I mean, one of the things that we do know is change is kind of something that just happens. And he had the potential for it. It was there. And for whatever reason, it's mind-blowing to me. And I know I'm going beyond my 10 minutes. So, yes, I have issue with time. Right? When I tell people, it's like, this video is going to be short 2 hours later. If you're arguing about, let's say, I don't know, you're playing chess, and you're playing for, let's say, money, cash, let's say $20. You losing hurts, and your dignity hurts a little bit more than the fact that you lost the cash. If you're doing something, and let's say a person's life is at stake, well, losing matters more. Because of the quantity, what's at stake is just so over the top. You would think that it would make you take on a certain level of severity in the game space to which you're operating in order to ensure that you don't lose, or at the very least to maximize your chances for winning. And at some point, a choice has to be made on how far are you willing to go? Meaning, what matters more? Does it matter more to get into the presidency and deal with all of these issues, all of these pain, quantify the amount of pain for something like 42% of the country making $18,000 a year? What does that mean, honestly, in real terms, on a day-to-day from the standpoint of your life? Does that mean that the lights are off at some points? Does it mean you can't get your health care at other points? Even say for the moment that you make more than that. What does all that also mean just from having a kid and to live? Should you have a country that deals with those things, yay or nay? Those are policy issues. Those are not acts of God. And if those things are not dealt with, why is it not right for the public to seek redress of their grievances through the political space, i.e. Sanders? And should you not, considering all of that pain of what it means to be a human being and to be able to feel and experience pain and lack and loss, and you are trying to remedy that to some degree, and yet that quantity, that nuclear bomb of hurt is not sufficient enough to motivate him to go after a guy that he considers a friend. What? When in Star Trek, when Cisco was, spin polish officer, when push come to shove, his values mattered less. Meaning, how do you reconcile that? Like, say for the moment, you say, look, I'm a Starfleet officer. I believe in all of these things: honor, truth, ethics, morality, etc., 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 as we define them as human beings. And then you're in a situation where billions of lives are at stake. But you need to lie, cheat, steal, and kill in order to win and prevent those billions of lives from being lost. And you go home and say, you know what? Couldn't do it, man. Couldn't do it. Couldn't lie like that. I had to be honest with myself. Or do you do what you need to do in order to save those billions of lives and accept that, okay, my value system in this particular environment was inadequate to deal with the outcome that I needed, and you go on with your life? I'm making the point that your value system in some situations matters less. But in this situation, for Sanders, all of that hurt, pain, and anguish mattered less than remaining buddy with Joe Biden. And that's monstrously painful to deal with. Like, you have no idea how dispiriting that is. That's the horse that you're backing, and the person who you're backing to do a particular task has the capability of doing the task, has the tools, had the equipment, even had people around him egging him on to do what he needed to do. And he couldn't do it. I mean, put it in perspective for the moment. Joe Biden got caught lying about the civil rights movement back in the 80s. Joe Biden drops out of the race for lying, plagiarizing speeches, and lying about his education. He was a flagrant liar back then also. Joe Biden said he was being part of the civil rights movement. He was part of the civil rights movement. He was not. Joe Biden admits back then, I was not a part of the civil rights movement. I've played this video 1,000 times. Joe Biden comes up in this race and stands before a church full of black people and says, yeah, I was out there in the streets. I was liberating movie theaters. That's what I was doing. Joe Biden, me, right here. This guy, this face. The exact same thing that he admitted to in the 80s that he was not doing. And it never occurred to anybody, not a single fucking person, to play the video with him saying, yeah, I was lying about that. My bad. I was not doing that. And Joe Biden went from one church to the next saying that same thing. And you think to yourself, wait a minute. Are you in a campaign or not? And even if you have these kind of ethics about yourself, okay, fair enough. It's problematic if those ethics matter more than real world phenomena. That's the first point. And the second point, he's catching a person in a lie. Meaning it's not an unfair shot if you want to take it that way. If you want to say, okay, fair enough, I don't want to get involved in this kind of back and forth with this kind of mudslinging. Fair enough. But it is absolutely fair game to catch somebody in a lie and say, he's lying about that. Look right here. He said it in the 80s. Because it gets across that the person's character is somewhat lacking. You did that, by the way, when you did the Social Security thing, when you made the point that he was lying about Social Security. But on this, not so much. And you were marching with King. Not him. What the fuck? Like, how am I supposed to take that? And now I see your group coming out here. Yes, I'm sorry, I'm bitching. That's where I'm at right now. I'm bitching. This is not doing the news anymore. This is just me bitching. Who the fuck gives a shit what you all think about the vice presidential pick? I'm just astonished that you even felt the need to put this out at this point. Yeah, that's where I'm at. Bitter, rageful, a bit indignant. That's where I'm at. That is where I am at. Let's see. Did I even do a show?